Toys in the Victorian times, how are they different from today's? Let's find out. No matter how times change, one thing will always be certain: how much children love toys. However, getting your hands on one in the Victorian era would have been quite difficult because they were much more expensive than they are today. Why? Well, toys were made differently then. Each one had to be handmade and required a lot of skill and hard work from a toy maker. Toys made by machines, as they often are today, are much cheaper to make and therefore much cheaper to buy. The materials used back then were also very different. While today, most toys are made from cheap plastic, in the Victorian times, most toys were made from expensive wood or metal. Rocking horses had manes made from real horse's hair, and dolls were made from china. So a big difference between then and now is that in the Victorian times, many poorer families couldn't afford to buy toys, so they would often make their own. One great example of this is the peg doll, made from, you guessed it, a peg. It was a peg with a bit of cloth wrapped around it. Let's have a look at other common Victorian toys. Like today, children in the Victorian times would play with marbles, skipping ropes, or kites. Another toy they liked, which isn't very common now, was a hoop and stick, which they'd roll down the road. There was also the cup and ball, which is exactly what it sounds like. A wooden ball on a string, which had to be swung upwards and caught in the attached cup. Spinning tops were also popular in the Victorian times. Dolls' houses were out of reach for most, but were a firm favourite in well-to-do homes. They would have replica furniture down to the last detail. Rich children also had rocking horses and clockwork train sets. In the Victorian times, children became fascinated with toys that made pictures move. For example, lots of people had a kaleidoscope which created ever-changing symmetrical patterns using mirrors. They were like early TV shows. So, many of the toys that they had back then are the same toys that children like to play with today. Dolls, trains, marbles, and skipping ropes are still seen everywhere. Other toys, such as peg dolls, are not quite as common. You can see that Victorian toys were a little bit different, but also very much the same as today. They were always designed for one thing, so kids can have fun.